What's up, guys? Today I want to talk about the Galaxy S10 Plus in 2022. So this is still, in my opinion, in a lot of other people's opinions, this is one of Samsung's best phones that they've released ever. A lot of people think after the Galaxy S10 Plus that Samsung started to go sort of downhill following the trends, with Apple's removing the headphone jack and now removing the SD card support. And a lot of people view this device and the Galaxy Note 10 Plus as sort of peak, Samsung at their best. So let's go ahead and revisit this older flagship phone here. So one of the things that I like about this phone is the design is actually still pretty good in 2022. I actually recommended this to my dad and he actually really likes this phone. So I think the design still looks pretty good. It's a still, very classy looking device here. And what I like about this color scheme is that you can't really see fingerprints on this phone at all, which is something that's really cool. So even though it has that glossy finish, it's a phone that you can kind of rock without a case and or a skin, and it still remains very clean looking. So I think overall for the design, it still looks somewhat, modern in 2022. It's a very lightweight phone as well too, but still has, that very premium feel to it. It does have, like I said, headphone jack at the bottom, dual speakers, and then we have our Bixby button and then our volume rocker. But overall, it's a really nice phone to hold and to look at. Now the Galaxy S10 Plus still has pretty much an excellent display. It's a really beautiful panel here. This is a 6.4-inch dynamic AMOLED display. It's HDR10 Plus. Has a slight curve to it, which does not bother me at all. And this phone does have the double punch hole to it, which I always have fun, picking out wallpapers to sort of fill it in. But it is 522 for the PPI, and it's a full 1440p panel, so it's a really, really nice panel as far as the colors and as far as the resolution and the PPI. Everything looks super sharp on this phone as far as the screen goes. So it's just a really beautiful screen to look at. I get a few questions about the punch hole. So does it bother you? Not really. Once you start using the phone, it really is not a big deal at all. You sort of just forget it's there basically. But as far as the screen, this is a very high quality panel, still very sharp. It's much better than anything that you would find at the price point that this phone is at. And this phone is at around, and this wallpaper is from Wallpaper's Den. This phone is around $238 to $280. So you can easily pick this phone up well under $300 now. And yeah, it's still just a really nice panel. Now I do want to talk about these specs a little bit more on the S10 Plus. So this phone, it does have the Snapdragon 855 chip on here. You also have the Adreno 640 GPU, micro SD card support, 128 gigs of internal storage, and this one is 8 gigs of RAM. And performance wise, this phone is still pretty fast as far as gaming and stuff like that. So you can see you can still play PUBG, HDR Extreme, even all the way up to Ultra HD. So if you want to use this phone as a gaming device, you can definitely do that in 2022. Not only is it great for gaming, but like I said, super cheap, for gaming as well too. So I would go with this phone over most mid-rangers, like let's say for instance Samsung's Galaxy A53 will not play nowhere near as good as this game or this phone will. So if you really want to get the best value for your money as far as from a gamer's perspective, you would skip the budget phone and the mid-range phone and get this one, and you would be saving money as well too, because something like a Galaxy A53 is like $400 and this is around the $200 price point. So definitely consider that if you are trying to get into gaming. It runs super smooth on this phone. And also, just for a comparison, you can see your Geekbench scores here. You can go ahead and compare those as well too. Now this phone still has a lot of the bells and whistles that you would find in something like a Galaxy S22 Ultra. It actually still has a lot of the same things, so it's pretty crazy. So people always get kind of tripped up about that, but you can see this phone has NFC, Samsung desktop support, Dolby Atmos. It has secured folders. There's nothing that this phone has that this phone, doesn't have. So I always think it's pretty funny because you're not really missing out on anything as far as the One UI experience goes. This phone even has the reverse wireless charging feature as well too. This phone also has some pretty respectable stereo speakers on here as well. So pretty loud and nice sounding speakers. On top of that, like I said, you do have the headphone jack if you prefer to do the physical headphones. And yeah, so as far as the feature wise, this phone still is pretty much top tier. You even have the IP68 dust and water resistant on here, so you can get this phone wet with no issues. So as far as that goes, it's still a lot to offer here, and the under the display fingerprint sensor is buttery smooth on this phone. It is very, very fast, almost instant. You also can take advantage of the face unlock on here as well too if you desire to. Now, image quality on the Galaxy S10 Plus is still pretty good. It has a 12 megapixel standard and a 12 megapixel telephoto that does 2x optical zoom, and then you have a 16 megapixel ultra wide, and then it has 4K 60 video, and then a 10 megapixel selfie cam, and then you also have an 8 megapixel depth sensor up front as well too, so it has that dual camera setup, and then it's a 4K 60 resolution for that one. And the image quality is still pretty good. I'm going to do a comparison with some newer phones, but if you check out the S10 Plus versus the S22 Ultra video, you will be able to see that image quality is still very good on this phone. Yes, if you take this phone out of pretty much bright lighting and good lighting, images can get a little bit soft. That's something that I've noticed. So the newer Galaxy phones, what I noticed is the big difference is slightly more detail with those phones, since they have way bigger lenses, right? 108 megapixel lenses and all that good stuff and crazy zoom. This phone does not have all of that, so you'll kind of notice if you take it out of good lighting, the low light shots aren't as good as the newer phones. But I'm telling you, daytime photos in very well lit areas, this will take some pretty good shots still. So I was pretty impressed with the image quality and also the video as well too. Alright, so lastly, let's go ahead and talk about battery life. So the battery life on this phone, it has a 4,100 milliamp battery. 15 watt fast charging is a little bit slow. These days in 2022, you have just much faster charging these days. But you do have wireless charging on here, and you also have the reverse wireless charging on here as well, which is something that I always like. So if you want to charge your earbuds or another phone with this device, you can do that. Battery life on here, I can pretty much easily still, even with this used Galaxy S10 Plus, I can still easily squeeze 6 hours out of this phone pretty easy. So the battery life is actually pretty decent still in 2022. It's not something, I never feel like I'm constantly running to charge this phone a lot. But like I said, it really depends on how you use your device. So S10 Plus is still a very good phone for people who want that sort of Samsung experience without the features being stripped back, right? So you got your SD card support, you still have your headphone jack. The only thing about this phone is that this phone, Android 12 One UI 4.1, will be the last major OS update, and this phone will go into its security patch stages. If you're big on software and you gotta have the latest, next version of Android, then that'll be an issue for you. If you don't care, then you will be perfectly fine for the next 3 years because you'll have those security patches.